Hi there, welcome to Newsnight. I'm Ladi Akiridoluale. Thanks for being with us today. The Petroleum Industry Bill, also known as the PIB, has returned to the national stage with public hearings in both chambers of the National Assembly. Like previous efforts to make the bill law over the last almost 2 decades, the public hearings this time also got quite heated. What is the fate of this bill, and why is it so important to Nigeria's petroleum industry and national development? Also, with labor seemingly still in the trenches over frequent rises in the price of petrol as well as electricity, what is the government thinking on these issues and how will it proceed? Newsnight talks to the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Chief Timipre Sylva. Honorable Minister, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's begin from what some would say the most basic issue. Where are we with the issue of Nigeria's refineries? Before we get to their impact, where are we today with them? Is the government thinking of selling them? Are they thinking of doing PPP? What exactly is being done?
Well, I always say that whatever we achieve in the Ministry of Petroleum, the issue of the refineries will continue to be on at the uppermost part of the minds of Nigerians. We are going to rehabilitate the refineries. That process has already started. The tender process will end in a few weeks from now, and we are hoping that actual work in Port Harcourt refinery rehabilitation will start this quarter. We are also expecting to start work on the rehabilitation of Warri Refinery and Kaduna Refinery. So, on the whole, what I will say is that we are not selling those refineries. We're not looking at the PPP arrangement. We want to rehabilitate those refineries and get them functional. The only difference at this time will be that we are not going to leave the management in the hands of government alone. We're going to have professional managers to manage those refineries. And we are hoping that these refineries will be functioning in a completely deregulated environment. And that means that the refineries can operate commercially and viably.
Let me then bring you to what you said last, the deregulated environment, because there's a link, as you've just established, between the two. What is the thinking, what is your thinking, and what is therefore the thinking of government with respect to the guided deregulation, complete deregulation, or continued regulation of the petroleum industry, particularly first the downstream and with reference to petrol? Because every other thing in the downstream has been deregulated. But petrol seems to be the one that has problems, if you like.
That is the challenge. I always say that deregulation is something that we must do in this country. First and foremost, we don't have the money now to continue to subsidize. We have a few challenges, but I think we've come to a point where we know, and there is some consensus between most people in Nigeria that we need to deregulate to continue. We don't have the foreign exchange to continue to import product and sell at a subsidized price. So we will have to leave the product supply system to the market forces so that people can have availability. The most important thing now for us is for product to be available to the people, because before now, the biggest challenge was to actually sustain availability because of subsidy. So we want to be able to sustain that availability to the Nigerian, and also to free up monies for the development of other aspects of Nigeria.
Now, given that, it would appear as if the government is taking its time to go from regulation to complete deregulation. There are, even as we speak, there are people who are advocating that you should just have left it to market forces. But it seems as if the government chose first to be at this halfway point, which is where, yes, the prices are open, it's free for people to exit and enter into the market, provided they obey the rules. But the government hasn't quite removed itself from the arena. Why is that?
No, government has removed itself. And we are not at an halfway point. It's just that we are being very mindful of the situation as well. And what we are mindful of is the availability of foreign exchange. You know, the deregulation was announced at a point where crude oil prices were at the lowest. That had its own advantages, but it also had its own disadvantages because also at that same time, foreign exchange availability was at its lowest. So although the product supply system has been deregulated, marketers, independent marketers cannot access foreign exchange to import this product on their own because the central bank simply did not have the foreign exchange to give them. So at that point, government, NMPC, which is a government-owned corporation, had to step in to import. That's actually the only point of involvement of government at this point, that NMPC is importing the product because they have access to their own foreign exchange because they had their own crude oil that they sell and they are able to generate the foreign exchange to import. So NMPC continue to do that, but as the foreign exchange situation improves, then NMPC will step back also and allow marketers to access foreign exchange and import by themselves, and then we would have achieved complete deregulation.
Are you concerned? Are you looking at a situation where you prevent the establishment of some kind of monopoly cartel, where the really big marketers bandy together and they set prices that because they are so big and they dominate, nobody is able to question them on the price or force it down?
That will then be the role of government. Everywhere in the world, government protects the consumer. We also know that that can happen, so government will always step back and watch and protect the consumer so that marketers cannot just profiteer on the consumer. That is government's role all over the world, and that is the role that government will continue to play as a regulator of the sector. Just the role that FAN plays in the aviation industry, the role that central bank plays in the financial industry. So that is the role that government will now begin to play to ensure that the consumer is protected from being
Given
cheated.
this, as we speak now, the Petroleum Ministry is like the cash cow for the government. It's what generates the most revenue for government, even as we speak. But you are battling with the issue of production cuts at the international level in order to shore up prices.
Yeah.
And that has impact locally in terms of how much Nigeria is able to produce for the purposes of export. How are you managing this balancing act? Because I know you're also prominent in OPEC.
That is the challenge, really. It's a big challenge for us because you're looking at production versus price. I mean, some people think, oh, let's produce and produce as much as possible. But if you produce as much as possible and the prices at the international market collapse, then you are in trouble. Then you cut short your production. Of course, the market, the prices go up, but at the end of the day, you are not really getting the optimal value. Well, that is a challenge that we have to manage. But you know that last year, we confronted a situation that has never happened before. A situation where prices collapsed. In some places, the prices collapsed to zero. So people were even being paid to come and evacuate crude oil.
Yes.
So it got to that point. So now we looked at it and said, look, the best way is to cut so that we can shore up prices, at least earn a little bit, and wait for the better days to come.
Well, if that is the situation now, then something else that is related that will be very important is how much do we have in reserve to be able to take advantage when the prices stabilize or go up, depending on the environment in which we're operating at that time?
Well, we have a very robust reserve. Our crude oil reserve stands at about 37.5 billion barrels. But also, last year, we were able to, when everybody was required to produce to maximum, we were also able to achieve up to 2.5 million barrels production in Nigeria in one day. But of course, because of the OPEC constraints, we cut down. So we believe that if today they blow the whistle and they say we should produce to capacity, we should be able to produce from 2.5 million barrels and above. And that, I believe, is very robust.
Right now, there is the process for allowing for marginal bids for oil fields, rather bids for marginal fields, and that may involve some of the local operators and all of that. Is that part of a design to increase this reserves that you're talking about, or is that supposed to bring them into the full stream at some point to compete with our IOCs?
It's not part of our design to improve reserves. It's actually part of the design to increase our reserve to production ratio. At this moment, we have enough reserve in Nigeria that we can actually support a daily production of up to 4 million barrels per day. But unfortunately, we are not there yet. So we still have a good headroom for improvement. But the marginal field bid round is to actually support the participation of local people to build local capacity. Before now, the oil industry was more of a foreigner-dominated industry. But we're trying to now involve Nigerians. So we're saying some of those assets that are marginal in nature to the big producers should be given to us to give to local people to manage so that we can actually encourage the development of local capacity.
Given that, are you then worried in any way, being the superintendent of this industry, that given what is going on internationally, which COVID only exacerbated, are you concerned that possibly some of those large operators may consider the margins of production vis-a-vis the prices, like what is happening in the US in terms of shale oil, and say, look, rather than continue, perhaps we should just look for those who can take over these assets around and then move away?
I don't think so. I think Nigeria is still a profitable territory for most of the IOCs. However, we are already in the process of improving some of those, some of the profitability as well. I mean, we are in the process of, for example, passing the PIB. And the international community, the producers have been with us for long enough. They understand the territory, and they know that this is going to be a territory that they need to be in for all time.
Given what you just said, I was going to actually bring up the PIB, which you talked about, because it seems as if everyone in the industry now is waiting for this bill. People are talking about investments being held because of it. There are people who are talking about even participation being a bit tepid while they wait to see what government or what the National Assembly will pass and what the president will sign as the bill and all of that. What's the status report with the PIB?
Yeah, in this industry, certainty is everything. You know, to the investor, if they're not certain about the environment, they don't want to invest. So there is the need for us to bring some certainty. We've been in the process of passing the PIB for a long time now. For 20 years, this country has been trying to pass the PIB. And so most of the investors took a sit-down-and-look approach because, I mean, if I'm going to invest in a territory and that they are in the process of changing the laws, I have to wait to see the exact complexion of the law before I invest or before I take the final decision. So most investors have actually taken that sit-down-and-look approach. That's why, frankly, at this point, it's become very, very expedient that we pass the PIB. And we are working with the National Assembly. Right now, there is a consensus between us and the National Assembly that it's time to pass the PIB, and we're working with them. It has passed second reading in both houses. It's now been committed to the committees in both houses. And we are very much well in the process of passing the PIB very soon.
The National Assembly comprises of essentially politicians. Some of them, of course, being professionals, but they are politicians. You are a politician, but now you are superintendent over a ministry where major considerations are technical. And then in the general consideration for a bill that essentially will be technical in its considerations mostly, there might be political input into it that may then tend to water down what is essentially technical.
I don't think so. We're working closely with the National Assembly, and I'm very happy with what they are doing. They've got consultants who are working with them, and these consultants are technical people, industry people who are really advising them, and they are working closely with us, as I told you. So I don't think that political infiltration will happen.
Let me ask about something else before we go to another aspect of the industry, which you are championing. And that has to do with the issue of JVs, joint ventures. Sometimes these become controversial because there are those who allege that the international oil companies cheat the country in terms of taxes, in terms of how much crude they lift versus how much they declare, and all of that. And then the demand for Nigeria's own cash call arrears as part of the production process and all. You're very familiar with this. What do you make of the whole procedure? Is Nigeria in good stead with that, or are you hoping for a situation where the PIB will improve the situation? Part B of the question, of course, will be: have we caught up with our JV cash call arrears? Are we up to date now?
I don't think we have any problems with JV cash calls now. In some cases, what we did was to do novation. That means we allowed the oil companies to take the responsibility, bring the funding, invest, and then we're able to reconcile at the end when they produce. But I don't think there's any problem with the JVs at all. We as Nigerians are capable of monitoring the performance of the JVs, except Nigerians think that Nigerians do not have the capacity. And when they talk about oil companies lifting crude and we don't exactly know, then they don't really understand how this works. It just can't happen because these companies produce into terminals. And we can determine exactly what goes into the terminal and what goes out. I mean, there are all kinds of agencies at the terminals to determine what goes in. I mean, except they say that these companies actually go deliberately to steal the oil at the wellhead, which is not possible. But as long as they are producing crude to the tank, which is at the terminal, it's not possible for us to not know how much we are producing. So when people out there say, oh, it's not possible for us to know and they are just producing and we don't know what they are producing, then it's unfounded.
Are you going to be in support of a stipulation that all oil companies should relocate to their areas of production? Essentially, that they should all leave Lagos and Abuja and move back to the Niger Delta.
Well, this is a very tricky one for me.
I understand. I understand perfectly. I understand perfectly.
But frankly, I will say that would have been optimal for the industry. But unfortunately, I also say to the people in the producing areas that they have a responsibility before that happens. What their responsibility is to make sure that they have peace in their territories. But if they can ensure peace in their territories, I believe that will be optimal. Oil companies operating from their areas of operation will be optimal for the industry, and it will cut down cost as well.
One of the things you're referring to, but which you have not mentioned, and which you were deeply involved in resolving back then as governor of Bayelsa, was the militancy in the Niger Delta. I remember very vividly the picture of you bringing some of those men commanders to Abuja here to meet with then President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, and how tense the nation was at that time. What do you make of the situation now? Is it a lot different, or are you still having pockets of concern about peace that you mentioned in the area?
I will say that it's a lot different now. I mean, when I got into Bayelsa as governor, we had about 500,000 barrels shut in production in Bayelsa alone. So it was a very dire situation. So we had to look for solutions to that problem. We've solved the problem. But of course, there are other issues as well. I believe also that the amnesty program was not managed as conceptualized.
How do you mean?
Yeah, because you see, I conceptualized that program.
I know, that's why I'm asking.
I sold that program to the then president. And the whole idea was not to keep the program in perpetuity. It was to wean off so that we have to give skills to some people and give them jobs, education to others and give them jobs. But unfortunately, I will say this, the amnesty program today has been in existence for over 10 years.
Indeed.
We have spent billions and billions and billions, and yet we've not been able to build one good institution of skills acquisition in Nigeria. We sent people to Cameroon to train as carpenters. We sent people to Ghana to train as welders. But we have not built the institutions in country to be able to train these people. I believe that those institutions would have also been very useful to us at this point, when we are also dealing with a similar situation in the north, Boko Haram. Those who denounce Boko Haram should have been able to be sent to some institutions and given some skills and training. But unfortunately, we have not gone there. That's why I said the amnesty program has not been managed as conceptualized. But on the whole, the Niger Delta is quieter, and you will agree with me, than when we conceptualized that program.
I then bring you now to the issue of the Niger Delta itself. As a son of the Niger Delta in government, both at state and at federal level, you're very much aware of the fact that, yes, as you pointed out, it's a lot more peaceful and so on, but agitations continue for various things. There are people who are saying that, look, we're still not getting the level of employment we want. There's still pollution from oil producing activity and so on in the area. Do you perhaps think there's too much expectation of authority? Or is it that other people below who are not as prominent as you, who may have been given the task of doing some of that work, are the ones who are dropping the ball?
I don't think so. I believe that agitations at certain level will always be there. There is no situation where people will not agitate for better situations. Even in America, where we consider things to be better than here, people agitate. You go to the UK, people agitate. But at least we are at a point where the agitation is manageable, I would say. And this manageable agitation will continue to be with us. I don't think we can expect a situation where there will be absolutely no agitation at all. Of course, people will continue to expect more. So, I mean, what's happening in the Niger Delta, some people still expect more. Some people think that a lot has been given to them, and that will continue to be with us. But at least the good story is that the place is quieter now, and the agitation is a lot more lawful.
COVID-19 itself has affected the petroleum industry in ways that more people than not do not know. Because a lot of the activity takes place in far-flung places, offshore, sometimes in areas where there are no settlements or so on. But this whole issue of social distancing, you can see the gap between where you're sitting and where I'm sitting, the constant wearing of masks and all the other protocols. Do you think it has affected the global industry, apart from the issue of price, in terms of even practices? And going forward, what would you expect to see? Because it doesn't look like the COVID-19 is going anywhere anytime soon. So what would you expect to see in terms of how the industry will operate with COVID in its background?
Well, COVID-19 has changed everything. I mean, today, I mean, a few days ago, we had OPEC meeting, yes, but it was virtual. Nobody would have thought of a virtual OPEC meeting before COVID-19. And also, in most of the things we do today are virtually, also in the industry. But it has also led to some savings. A lot of people think that COVID-19 has made it easier for decisions to be taken without bringing everybody together. So there are good sides also in the industry that people think that it has led to a lot of cost savings. Also, for us in Nigeria, COVID-19 has also allowed our people to be more engaged. Because if you will remember, at the beginning of COVID-19, everybody, of course, all countries, nationals left Nigeria. I mean, they all went to their countries and their countries were all on lockdown. That means Nigerians had to step into their shoes. And up till now, we've not recovered. A lot of people have not really returned back, especially the expatriate community. So Nigerians are beginning to take more involvement in the industry.
Piracy, bunkering, illegal refining are, it seems now, part of the production activities, I will say, of the industry. Are you satisfied that everything is being done to tackle that? Or do you think, as some people have advocated, that some of the technologies that some of those doing it, particularly those who are homegrown, should be harnessed, and that those people should be bought over one way or the other in order to use that technology to improve local content within the industry? I don't know. That may seem like a wild idea.
Well, I really don't. I can't see the span of that idea yet. But I will say that, I mean, piracy, it's a very unfortunate thing, kidnapping. But I believe that if you compare between what obtains now and what obtained in the past, I think it is less now. There is still a lot of piracy, I understand, but I think law enforcement is dealing with it. We here also are looking at other ways of dealing with it, and I believe that in a very short time we'll be able to get a full handle on it.
How about pipeline vandalization? Because that one is directly related to oil production.
Yeah, pipeline vandalization, of course, sometimes happens now, but it's less than it used to be. I mean, before now, you had situations where production, only 50% or less than 50% of production got to destination. Now we've got a little bit of a handle. The security cost has actually risen, and that has actually impacted the cost of production as well. But I can assure you that pipeline vandalization is less than it used to be.
Now let me come to what I said it was that you were championing, and which is, it seems, not just you now, the way to go, even internationally, the switch to gas, the new emphasis on gas. In 2020, there were several activities that the ministry pioneered that had to do with a major move into gas and gas use. What's the thinking behind that before I get into the various aspects? What's the general thinking behind the move to gas?
Well, one of the things we thought about is that if we're going to deregulate, which meant that pump prices are going to rise a little bit, it meant that we have to give an alternative. It's a lot like building a highway and tolling it, and then providing an alternative route that is probably longer. So we felt, let us give an alternative. And we believe that gas is a cleaner fuel. It's a more efficient fuel. We have a lot of it in Nigeria. Unfortunately, we have not really developed it. We also saw that our gas penetration was also the lowest in Africa, unfortunately. You go to the local places, you see a lot of logging for firewood, a lot of deforestation activities for firewood. So we thought it's better for us to introduce gas as a cooking fuel. And we've made some progress, and I believe that on the whole, this is the way to go. Especially now that the world is looking at cleaner fuels everywhere. I mean, they are looking at going over to renewables. Unfortunately, we are not in that race. So at least we have a cleaner fuel, which is gas. So we want to harness what we have so that we can catch up with the rest of the world.
Would that also have any impact on gas flaring?
Oh, yes. We have the gas flare commercialization program as part of this. So we're actually giving out the gas flares to people to manage so that they can harness the gas from the flares and then now make it usable.
Let me come to the projects in perspective. Let me start with the one that has more immediate impact, which is the switch of automobiles to the use of gas. Some have said we could have a problem shortly ahead because a lot of our gas currently is being exported and we earn huge amounts in foreign currency for that. But that if local consumers are now involved in gas consumption, they're buying for their vehicles, what happened or what's happening with petrol could end up happening with gas, in which case you are paying international price for it because there is an opportunity cost involved. If NLNG, for example, was going to sell at $100 for a cubic foot of gas, you have to be able to match that if you want them not to export it.
Well, the assumption
Right.
there is that we're not going to improve the supply. And now, but that is not correct because once we improve utilization of gas domestically, it will improve consumption. And that means there will be a lot more production activities. Today, people are not producing as much of the gas, developing as much of the gas because the incentive is not there. The market is not there. So they have not developed the gas. But once the market develops, then the need for the production also develops. Then there will be a lot more investments in the production of the gas. So it will balance out. It's not going to now, because you are now, there's a lot more demand in the domestic market, there will be shortage. There won't be shortage, there will be a lot more activity. Right now, you look at the situation where the gas flare commercialization program is not even complete yet. I mean, we're looking at the future. That means that if you have the gas flare commercialization program done already, that all the gas that is being commercialized that have been given out to people will actually be developed and will be put in the market. So there will be a lot more production, which is going to balance out with the development of the demand.
If that is so, in the case of the automobile industry and the conversion process, I know that in the first phase, I think about 250,000 vehicles are being targeted. I don't know how long that would take. But ultimately, I think the idea is that all cars will have the capacity to convert and then, of course, new cars will come probably with that capacity. Is that the assumption?
No. What we are saying is that we're going to give out free conversion to 1 million cars.
Okay.
At which time that has become part of our national culture. And then, of course, it will be part of our national life. People can convert their cars. So we are actually kickstarting the process by ensuring that the first 1 million cars are converted free of charge to the owners.
How are those cars to be selected?
Anybody. If you want to convert your car, you go to a conversion center, they convert it for you, they charge us. We pay them. So if you are within the first 1 million cars, it will be free for you.
How about accessing the gas itself? Because these are some of the questions.
No, because look, already NNPC has enabled their filling stations. And there are a lot of filling stations across Nigeria that have enabled their filling stations. So you can actually drive into filling stations and just fill in the gas. When you create the demand, then the investments also will be enabled. People will now know that, a lot of people need gas, so they will now go. It's a matter of enabling their filling station, just ensuring that they expand their filling station to also sell gas. So people can now enable their filling stations for everybody. So what we are expecting is that at some point, every filling station will be gas enabled. So you can drive into any filling station in Nigeria and fill up gas. That is the expectation. So we have just rolled out, we have kickstarted the process, and we expect that it will grow a life of its own, and then people will now convert, and it's better for the people, really. It is cheaper. It cannot be adulterated. It is easier on your car. It is faster to burn. And, for very many reasons, it's cleaner on the environment. So for very many reasons, we believe that Nigerians should really convert to gas.
The other leg of this, of course, is projects themselves in terms of gas production. The president in 2020, towards the end of 2020, virtually commissioned one of such projects. Very large, had been long in the making, but had stalled at various points. But finally, the ministry under you, with the backing of the president, got it kick-started. What's that supposed to achieve?
It's going to achieve availability. Because if we are going to encourage usage of gas domestically, we must also ensure availability. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Once you are able to encourage demand, then it's going to also encourage supply, because people are going to invest a lot more and then pump into the domestic market. And that's what we want to do. We're just trying to enable that sector to grow exponentially and create opportunities for Nigerians.
It brings me back to the issue of, as you said, creating demand. Because as you were talking, the other thing that occurred to me is that another sector that has been short of gas and who should benefit from all this would be the power supply industry, those who are doing electricity. Because quite a number of the plants complain about the fact that they can't access gas, or that the one they're accessing is too expensive. It doesn't make for economic viability for them. Are they also part of this matrix that is being constructed?
Of course, definitely, because, you can't be talking about gas without power. Unfortunately, the power sector has their problems as well. Their tariff problems, because, as you know, every investor wants profitability. So I really don't want to dwell on that issue, but of course, they are definitely part of the whole mix. We're looking at gas to power. We are looking at gas-based industries. Then we're looking at gas, auto gas, and then the domestic household gas.
The Train 7 of NLNG, the final investment decision has been taken. But it appears that there hasn't been action. Is that COVID related, or is there another reason?
It is just COVID. Train 7 FID has been taken. We're quite happy about it. Unfortunately, the COVID has not allowed engineers to travel. Of course, most of Europe was on lockdown for most of last year. So we've not been able to get the project started because of COVID. But at this point, we've agreed on a startup date of May this year. And we believe that by May this year, Train 7 will commence.
The other thing that I want to ask before I take you to the last set of questions has to do with the exploration activity in Lake Chad. What's the status report? Because I remember, I think it was either last year or the year before, there was some activity on that. And in fact, there were those who were saying, oh, if we found oil in that area and we start actually exploring, all the fighting would naturally stop because everybody would drop their guns and head for the wells. Is that perhaps optimistic?
Well, I think it's optimistic, but I have said it a few times that we found oil in the northeast, in Kolmani. We found oil, and we've started drilling activities also in the Chad Basin. I don't know how the discovery of oil in the area will impact all the issues there, but on our side, we have found oil, and we believe that in a very short time, we will start production.
That will be good news for those who are listening to you, and they will be wondering how quickly that will happen, because we'll be hearing about this drilling in Lake Chad for quite a while. But let me bring you to the last set of the areas that I wanted to take you up, Honorable Minister, and that is politics. Because as I said in the course of the interview, you're a technocrat, but you're also a politician. So this should be right up your alley. Everybody's attention, or at least those in the political arena, are focused on 2023. and the permutations, the calculations, and all of that. First, do you think the party that you are in, the APC, could have problems ahead of 2023? Because for the first time since its formation, General Buhari will not be on the ticket.
Well, I don't think I'm competent to comment on that, but I believe that APC is strong enough to weather the storm. I don't see any party in Nigeria today that is stronger than APC. Of course, we have our internal problems like every other party, and so does every party. So we are still, I believe, the party to beat, and I believe that in 2020 we will still have the presidency. And we have this trump card. We, like you said, the role of President Buhari in APC is that it's a rallying point. And when you have a rallying figure, you have a way of getting everybody come together at critical times. So I believe that he will continue to play that figure, that position, that role of a rallying figure, even outside government in APC. He continues to be a rallying figure, and that is one major advantage that we have that will give us the presidency in 2023.
But there have been other elections since that 2019 election, even in 2020. Your successor is now in the Senate. He won the senatorial election in 2020. So I'm wondering how that squares with what...
No. Of course, that cannot determine the status of a party. If you remember, those were already their seats. They didn't take any seat from the APC. So we didn't lose anything as such. It's not as if we lost our seat to them. It was them regaining their seats, which I think is not a big deal. Because the deputy governor was an APC senator. He left. Or was a PDP senator.
Yes.
He left to become deputy governor. And the governor was a PDP senator. He left. They were PDP seats originally, and PDP regained them. So APC did not lose any seats. So that really cannot be used to measure the status of APC in Bayelsa State.
But broadly in the South-South, all the South-South governors are PDP. So it's people like you that are holding up the APC, so as it's so to speak, within the zone. Do you think that that already starts you off with some level of challenge if it comes to taking control of the zone?
I agree. There is some challenge. I mean, I'm the first to agree that there is some challenge. I mean, we're not going to say that everything is normal, but I can assure you that now the APC is putting its act together. Just before you came, there was a reconciliation team here to discuss with me, and we are putting ourselves together. And in 2023, you will see a completely different APC in the South-South.
If you're thinking that way, between now and 2023, there's still a bit of time. And there's a common saying that 24 hours is a long time in politics, and that all politics is also local before it becomes national anyway. At the level of local politics, what do you think the people, because again, it is the process for making up their minds has started. And if people say that in the elections before now, there were some mistakes made, both by those who put themselves out there for office and by those who were doing the selection, the selecting process. Do you think that any lessons have been learned from that procedure, for example, within the parties, about imposition of candidates against popular will and so on and so forth? Have any lessons been learned?
Well, you see, in this case, let me say this. It's unfortunate, but no mistake was made in the choice of candidate in the case of Bayelsa. Now, you must realize that the deputy governor-elect that we're talking about is a 7th senator. Nobody has challenged his senatorial seat. Because everybody knows that what they presented before the court was a lie. I know the chap very well. I know when he was in the University of Science and Technology in Port Harcourt. So nobody can say he forged the certificates. Now they said there was a discrepancy in the name on his primary school certificate, on his secondary school certificate, and on his university certificate. Now I ask the first question, which one of them is forged? Was it the primary school certificate that was forged? I don't think so. I don't think anybody in his right mind will forge a primary school certificate. Was it the secondary school certificate that was forged? I don't think so. Was it the university certificate that was forged? But of course, the court in its wisdom has determined, and we have to obey. But I always say something. I say that for the rule of law to stand in any country, the judiciary must be above board in every case. And I rest my case here.
Honorable Minister, finally, we're at the start of 2021, and many people are worried. Some are uncertain. We've talked about some of the uncertainties here. Some are actually confused. What would you say to them as someone in government, someone who represents his people, someone who is in charge of a critical arm of the government, to assuage or calm them down as they look ahead? Because they're looking at insecurity. They're looking at COVID-19. They're looking at, unemployment. There was the NSAS thing towards the end of last year and all of that. What can you say to them to give them some kind of hope that 2021 definitely will be better than 2020?
Well, I always say, as a country, we should stop the blame game. Because we cannot, in all good conscience, say that only one party is responsible for the problems of Nigeria. First, the problems of Nigeria are historical. It is not this government that generated the problems. Also, if you look at the country, you cannot say it is only the people in government that are the problem. There are a lot of other people outside government who contribute to the problems of Nigeria. So what I always like to say, it's the collective working together of all of us that will salvage Nigeria. But if one group thinks there is only another group that is responsible, they are also making a mistake. The youth cannot say that it is only the people in government that are the problem. And so the government cannot also say that it's only the youth that are the problem. We cannot also say it's the elders that are the problem. And we cannot say it's only the women that are the problems. All of us as a country must come together. It is clear to all of us that there is a problem in Nigeria. So now we cannot say who done it. All of us must come together as a people and ask ourselves questions. But sometimes the problem is that some section of the country will just take to the streets and say, oh, these people are responsible. They are also making a mistake. But I believe that this year will definitely be a better year. Because last year, we all agree, COVID-19 happened on us. It was a global problem. It's not a Nigerian problem. Nobody foresaw it, so it took us by surprise. And we know now that COVID-19 may not have gone away. There are vaccines here and there. But even if it is with us, we now know that it is with us and we can plan around it. That means that definitely this country will not be as bad as last year. We're already beginning to see the signs. As they say, if the weekend is going to be good, you already begin to see the signs on a Friday. So already by this time, second week of January 2021, we're beginning to see the signs. Oil prices on the rise and so on. So we're beginning to see that this year definitely will be better. But in the course of the year, we should all agree as a people, as a country, to come together and resolve our problems as a country. And let us not sit wherever we are and be apportioning blames. Because in the end, nobody in Nigeria is a saint. All of us are somehow part of the problem that has brought us to where we are. I always say this, that if you come to Nigeria, at the airport, you probably confront corruption at the airport. I don't know, but it's possible. You get out of the airport into a taxi, you probably confront some corruption there. You get to the next checkpoint, you probably confront some corruption. You get to the hotel where you are staying, you probably confront some corruption. That means it's across. So let us try, as a people, identify the problems that are common to all of us and resolve them as a people and not apportion blames.
Honorable Minister, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking
Thank
with you.
you, my pleasure.
That's Newsnight. Thanks for watching. Do let us know what you think of the issues raised during the course of today's program. The social media handles are on your screen. We also have a podcast, channelstv.com/podcast Newsnight. I'm Ladi Akerido Luale. Goodbye.